Our next speakers actually need no introduction. Senator Cynthia Lummis is already in discussions with the incoming Treasury Secretary about crypto policy. She was on it from the second this election ended and those roles began to take shape. She has noted repeatedly that the U.S. still lags behind in establishing a clear regulatory framework. She has been outspoken in calling for SAB 121 to be overturned. She has been a pioneer in leaning into pragmatic crypto legislation and working to advance a comprehensive stablecoin bill with her Senate colleague and another friend of our industry, Senator Kirsten Gillibrand. Senator Lummis long ago recognized, as she puts it, the growing demand for our ever-evolving financial industry, and she will get back at it in the 119th Congress next year. She has pursued legal definitions for decentralized finance and to draw lines where federal agencies like the CFTC have jurisdiction over crypto. She is, in every sense of the word, a champion for us. She will be joined on the stage by Calvert, Vice President for U.S. Policy for Coinbase, Senator Lummis, and Kara. Please come on up.
Okay. Well, as all of you know, this is such a pleasure for me to have the conversation with Senator Lummis, being from Wyoming and really having grown up with her leadership in the state as state treasurer and then in the House and now in the Senate. And she has always put Wyoming first. But I think what we've seen now is that Wyoming's interests are the world's interests. And your leadership on a range of issues, but particularly crypto, I think has paved the way, not just for Wyoming, but for the United States and really for everybody around the world. So just so excited to be able to have this conversation with you. The first one I wanted to start with is we just had a major election, and you had a major role in educating other candidates, policymakers, and users too. What does the election mean for you and the crypto voter out there, and what's been accomplished in the last year?
The last election was a sea change for this industry, for digital assets. We were fighting for the last 4 years an administration that was hostile to this industry and kept it under wraps. So when we would go to the White House, the OCC, elsewhere in Treasury, the Fed, the FDIC, we were encountering roadblocks everywhere we went, but it was always disguised as some other agency's problem with our legislation or our ideas or the idea of giving special purpose depository institutions access to master accounts and such. What we learned was it was everywhere. Within the administration that is just leaving office, there was genuine unease to absolute hostility towards this industry. That is changing now, changing 180 degrees. So you have in the incoming administration a president-elect who is talking openly about digital assets, who has done transactions in digital assets, a vice president who has expertise in alternative coins and other digital assets. You have a new crypto czar. You have heads of Treasury, of the SEC, of the CFTC, and elsewhere in the administration coming in with expertise and advocacy for this industry. It is an absolute sea change. Now, when it comes to Wyoming, first of all, since we're both from Wyoming, I want to congratulate Kara. Her grandmother, Desi Bebout, just had the post office in Shoshone, Wyoming, named after her, the Desi. Her grandmother, Desi Bebout, was a veteran of the service, was the postmaster in Shoshone, was a parent to an NFL football player, and the only person who's been president of the Wyoming Senate and Speaker of the House, a dear friend of mine, and her mother basically founded and single-handedly kept going Wyoming Public Television. So I'm telling you, this family, Kara's family, is among the families who keep Wyoming going, keep Wyoming healthy, keep Wyoming vital and innovative. So it's no surprise to me that Kara Calvert is a leader in this industry as well, as is Wyoming. As you know, Wyoming was the first state to pass legislation to create special purpose depository institutions, had a blockchain council, and has continued to innovate in this space. But that's nothing new for Wyoming. We were also the state that created the LLC, the Limited Liability Company, and that is Wyoming's history and legacy, is to be innovative. It's the cowboy spirit. We have a bucking horse and rider on our license plates for a good reason. We are spirited people, and we don't let a bucking horse stop us from anything, from trying anything. And that's the Kara Calvert style, and that's the Wyoming way. And that's why you see that Josh Allen is the MVP candidate, most likely to win.
That's the real ticket there is Josh Allen. We're very excited about all of his work. But no, thank you, Senator. It is, I feel very honored for my grandmother and for all the work that my family has done in Wyoming. So thank you for that. Leadership in Wyoming, let's just stick with the theme for a second. Stablecoins, you're looking at stablecoins, but when we think about strategic Bitcoin reserve, it has been an issue now that's near and dear to your heart. You were ahead of your time in thinking about how Bitcoin could be a store of value, and I was hoping maybe you could give a little bit of background, how it was really rooted in some of the work you did as treasurer, but now how you think that can transform how we think about Bitcoin at the federal level and really internationally. So maybe just a little bit of background on your vision of strategic Bitcoin reserve.
Well, Bitcoin is like digital gold, and Wyoming's Permanent Mineral Trust Fund takes minerals in the ground where they are a store of value. It produces them and saves a portion of the revenue from that oil, gas, coal, uranium, trona, and puts it in a permanent mineral trust fund. I ran that fund when I was state treasurer, so I wanted a diversified asset allocation. We had 4.2 million acres of oil, gas, coal subsurface through our state lands. We had 3.6 million acres of surface estate, ag land mostly. We had a fully diversified asset allocation from stocks and bonds to special assets. And some of them we wanted to produce short-term revenue. Some of them we wanted to be a long-term store of value. And I was always looking for those assets that could serve the role of being a long-term store of value. Okay, fast forward to 2024. Now I'm in the US Senate looking for a long-term store of value, especially since we are $36 trillion in debt. And lo and behold, along comes Bitcoin. It is a long-term store of value. And it is mature enough now that we have seen that it truly is limited in quantity, that it is infinitely divisible, that it is an asset that's going to withstand the test of time and has proven so since its inception in 2009. So it is mature enough now to become part of our strategic asset reserve. The United States holds 5% of the gold, and so it seems appropriate to me that we also hold 5% of the Bitcoin. So the proposal in the bill is to buy 1 million Bitcoin over 5 years, roughly 200,000 Bitcoin a year, and hold it for 20 years. If we held it for 20 years in today's dollars, we would have roughly 16 trillion Bitcoin, which is almost half of our current debt. It does two things in that regard. It underpins the US dollar as the world reserve currency, and it takes some of the sting that my generation, the baby boomers, are placing on mostly your generation with all the debt that we're leaving you, and that we did manage to find a long-term strategic store of value to underpin the debt that we have incurred. So that's part of the goal. We don't have to invest new taxpayer dollars in this. We can convert current assets that we have to Bitcoin, thereby having a neutral source of already existing assets to convert to Bitcoin. But by converting to Bitcoin, we're converting from something denominated in US dollars that is ever losing value to something denominated in Bitcoin that is ever increasing value. So I think it's making a lot of sense. Fortunately, it makes a lot of sense to President Trump. And so we'll be working with this new White House, including his new czar, to implement a strategic Bitcoin stockpile.
And that is, you took the words right out of my mouth with the partnership with President Trump. He has embraced this. He's embraced an entire platform, actually. And I think that really the idea being the crypto capital of the world is something you've been talking about. Are you seeing right now not only in the Bitcoin strategic Bitcoin reserve, but how do you think the leadership is going to influence the work in the rest of the world in terms of crypto? Are we going to, are people going to get competitive again and actually fight over having crypto in their country? Are we going to welcome them onto shore? How do you think this evolves in the international space?
Yeah, I think it does evolve that way. We are behind other nations in terms of putting together a regulatory framework for digital assets. Europe is ahead of us. Europe has been trying to recruit businesses that were born in the United States to come and embed in Europe because it has a clear regulatory framework. So we need a regulatory framework, whether it's like Fit 21 or like Lummis Gillibrand in the Senate, which really are very similar. There are tiny nuances difference, but we need to get that passed. So we have a framework for stablecoin. We have a framework for what is a commodity and what is a security, and which of those two agencies, the CFTC or the SEC, has jurisdiction. And to make the rules of the road known, because as many of you here know, up until now, using enforcement actions and penalties and lawsuits to sort of bend the industry to understand what its regulatory framework is absolutely the wrong way to regulate. That's government telling the innovative private sector, you can innovate here but not there. And that's not the American way. The way that this has been handled for the last 4 years is fundamentally un-American. And so what's going to happen from now on is this industry gets to enjoy the benefits of being an American industry. You have a president who wants us to be the digital asset headquarters of the world. He wants Bitcoin mining to be here. He wants this industry and this expertise to be resident in this economy and robust. And further, because he articulated at Bitcoin 2024 his interest in a strategic Bitcoin reserve and in being the global leader in digital assets, the rest of the world is following suit. We're seeing other countries discuss Bitcoin strategic reserves. We're seeing people create Bitcoin strategic reserves in countries that don't have a representative democracy that they have to get through messy processes with. It's much easier for oligarchs to, pour money into these assets, like Captain Picard used to say, make it so. So we're seeing the world do that, and they're doing it because of what Donald Trump did. He signaled that this is an asset that is mature, it is digital gold, and it's important to the global economy.
I want to come back to the Hill in just a second and to the regulatory framework. But first, speaking of something that is highly un-American, it's denying banking services for legal businesses. And you have been a longtime advocate for ensuring that legal businesses have access to checking accounts, that they have access to their local bank, that they have access to lending, and that you, I think, have really taken this on. And would love to hear you maybe give us a little bit of background on debanking and why this matters so much, and why, as Americans, it's crazy that we would limit innovators from accessing these types of services.
Yeah, crazy is putting it mildly. The first choke point was under President Obama. And originally it was used for things like gun manufacturers, oil and gas companies, marijuana companies, things that had so-called reputational risk for banks, and for people who are really into tamping down fossil fuel use, using the banking industry to put the heavy hand of the government on the banking of oil and gas companies was a tool that they used scarily successfully during the Obama years. Well, they made it exponentially worse under the Biden administration. Now they're going after digital asset companies, the innovators in this space, as well as AI and other American innovations that are coming online. So now it's not just gun manufacturers, ammunition manufacturers, oil, gas, coal, and marijuana. It's every banking of digital assets you can possibly imagine. Silvergate Bank was never insolvent, never. They got debanked to the point where the bank had to close. Then you had that bank that... Signature. And even Barney Frank of Dodd-Frank had to say, you know, this is just the way that the government's telling the digital asset industry, you're not welcome here and you're not going to get banked here. And the way that they have treated this industry via this nefarious go in, do a bank examination. If there's a customer that's a digital asset customer saying, that's a risk, that is a risk to your examination, and you need to clean your customers of that kind of risk. And so it is the bank that eliminates the risk and gets the black eye for doing so. It's the regulators who are making them do it. It is a underhanded, corrupt system, and we've got to ferret it out and stamp it out. It's like a foreign country. It's not like us. We can do so much better, and we will do better in 2025.
That's what I was going to ask. At this point, agreed. And as a person who couldn't get a HELOC because I work at a crypto company, don't worry about the fact that it's a publicly traded company, I couldn't get a HELOC because they wouldn't count my income, too volatile. So these are crazy times. Thankfully, we have credit unions and other, I think, innovative banks out there, but this is a real problem. At this point, is it something that Congress has to fix, or is this something that the new, we have a dawn of a new day, is this something the regulators can come in and make a change and understand what's been happening? Where does the change happen?
Yeah, it's both. So among the things we're going to do, Senator Tim Scott was here this morning?
He was.
Okay. He'll be chairing the Banking Committee. He's creating a subcommittee on digital assets. We're going to have hearings on choke point. We're going to invite in some of the people that were debanked or people who have been threatened with being debanked, and we're going to have hearings. And so Congress's role at this point is to shine light. And shining light, is the best disinfectant. So we're going to be the ones who are doing oversight, shining the light on the skullduggery that's been going on. And then you'll see the regulators within these agencies, within the vice chair of the Fed for bank supervision, the FDIC, the OCC, the Treasury, and the White House, all working to make sure this never happens again. So it's both. And you're going to see hearings on choke point in the first 100 days. And we'll have, one of the great things that happened here was over Thanksgiving, Mark Andreessen got on Joe Rogan's program and sort of blew the lid off this. And then all kinds of people that had been debanked that I didn't even know about started discussing it on X, and I got extra names. I'm writing down, oh, thank you for your story, thank you for your story, so we can get them involved in sharing their stories about how many people were debanked and they got away with it. And so I want to say to those of you who stuck your necks out and supported the incoming administration in the last election, thank you. Thank you. It's going to make a big difference for your industry. We're still going to work in a very bipartisan way. I cannot say enough good things about Senator Kirsten Gillibrand. This has to be bipartisan. The Senate has to get 60 votes. This is not a subject that's limited to one party, but there has been one party that has been more innovation friendly, and it's the party that I'm in, and it's the party that's taking over the Senate, the House, and the White House.
Absolutely. So let's dig in a little bit then to that, the work that you and Senator Gillibrand have done on legislation. You had a bill out first. You've been doing it for 4 years now, a comprehensive bill ranging from issues around securities, commodities, stablecoins, and tax. You've got opportunities coming in the new year with reconciliation bills. There could be regular order because you will have potentially some digital asset subcommittees. Can you first talk a little bit about the work that the Senate Banking Committee and the Senate Ag Committee could do together and what that might look like, whether it's a digital asset subcommittee? How do you see that framing up for the actual just kind of structural working together part? Because that's really what helped Fit 21 get across the finish line was partnership. How do you see that happening in the Senate?
So I think we'll have a friendlier atmosphere in the Senate Ag Committee where the commodities portion of digital assets needs to be dealt with. Senator Bozeman, who will be chairman, is very amenable and friendly to this subject. It all got caught up in negotiations over the Farm Bill extension and how much of it was going to be for actual farmer relief versus how much for food programs. So it all got messed up in the blender of elected politics within that committee. They'll snap out of it, I'm sure of it. So we'll get to deal with that issue with regard to the CFTC jurisdiction in the Ag Committee. Then, finally, in the Banking Committee, we'll be able to get some legislation passed that will deal more with the SEC part, with the stablecoin part. And the original Lummis-Gillibrand bill included stablecoins. We separated it out, and Senator Gillibrand and I put out our own stablecoin bill. And so the House could see what we were thinking about stablecoins, because we were unable to get a peek at what our House counterparts were considering. I think part of the problem was that the White House wasn't entirely clear what it was going to ask Democrats for with regard to stablecoin. But we're going to be able to move that forward. I'm absolutely confident that working with both the House Ag Committee and the French Hill, who's going to be taking over House Financial Services, that we're going to have an atmosphere that is more conducive to actually get legislation across the finish line, with the help, by the way, of the White House and their new crypto czar, who I met with this morning. Their new Treasury Secretary is digital asset friendly. Of course, our new Vice President of the United States, digital asset friendly. Not only friendly, but knowledgeable. So I really think the right players are in place, and so many times policy is personnel and personnel are policy. I think this is an issue where that's true because we don't have a legislative framework, but we will get one. So continue to weigh in so we get a product that meets your needs. So you can continue to innovate. The people that need to be regulated through the SEC's really good disclosure capabilities are regulated in that space. But that those that behave more like a commodity, like Bitcoin and Ethereum, have access to that more or less heavy-handed framework requiring less disclosures.
Well, I know we're inching up on time here, but given that you will have a leadership role in the Senate Banking Committee, and do you think that you'll have the committee have hearings early on market structure legislation. That's been one of the real voids is under the leadership of Senator Brown. There were no hearings about market structure. There was no vetting on what constitutes a securities transaction. How do we think about these recent court cases and how they influence the decisions on what's an underlying asset look like? Do you think you'll be able to have hearings, and what does that look like?
I do think we'll have hearings. I don't know what the Trump administration is going to want the committee to move with first, whether it would be something like a strategic Bitcoin stockpile or reserve, or whether they want to see a market structure bill, and whether they want a comprehensive market structure bill or more targeted components of market structure. So we'll be working with the White House on that, as will our two chairs, Chairman Scott and then Chairman Franchil in the House. And so we'll move in the order that the White House wants to roll this out, is my guess. But in the meantime, we're also going to have hearings on choke point and hopefully some hearings on these frameworks that are not couched as the formal hearings. You know how these hearings are. You make a formal statement, then you go back and forth between Democrats and Republicans. They each get 5 minutes to yell at you or chew you out or talk about something they want to talk about as opposed to what the witnesses want to talk about. So I don't want to do it that way, so I've asked permission from Senator Scott to try some more informal type hearings. And you're used to this from Wyoming. Okay, I want to do it the way the Wyoming legislature structured hearings, which is we would have just sit downs with experts and we would go through legislation and people could raise their hands and say, you know, if this word were may instead of shall, it would make it easier for our industry to innovate in XYZ. So it was more of a sharing, a give and take between policy makers and experts. Now, I know that's not how Washington functions, but I want to try in this space to do that, because you have maybe in the Senate, I don't know, Kara, you may think this number is incorrect, and I want to know what you think the number is. Okay. How many Senate offices have a deep dive understanding of digital assets? Is it 5? Is it 10? Is it 50? What is it?
Ooh, I'd say you can count it on less than 2 hands. Probably around 10 with deep knowledge. I think that there are probably another 20 with a better handle on it, mostly because they had to learn from the SOB 121 vote, or they're coming from the House where they had to vote on Fit 21. And then you have probably another 10 to 15 that are curious and they know something about crypto, and then you probably have 40 that have never contemplated it, unless they received one of the 100,000 emails over the course of the last 2 days for Carolyn Crenshaw's nomination.
And I encourage you to continue to send those emails. That's how Congress learns about issues, is when their constituents get a hold of them. Whether it's a nominee or whether it's the way that the way it all started when I was, just a little voice in the wilderness wandering around, was we had a bill that really didn't have much to do with digital assets, but the IRS wanted a definition that was completely nonsensical. And they got it in the law, and it's still there, and it's nonsensical. It's a definition. Bitcoin miners don't know anything about the end user's taxes, and yet that's how the tax bill reads. Well, when that happened, the people in this industry and people who care about this flooded the Congress with texts and emails and messages. It was the first time this industry ever had a presence on Capitol Hill because you made your voice known with your senators and congressmen and women. And it's happening again, and it'll happen again and again if you keep active in this space. Otherwise, you will be ignored because we respond to our constituents. That's our job. So be a squeaky wheel as a constituent and make sure that your senator and your congressman know how important this issue is, to you, your livelihood, your family, your businesses, and our economy. Make sure you use your voice and educate them. That's the only way they're going to even want to know what you're doing, or care about what you're doing, or care about what's going to happen next year in this space.
Well, Senator, you are the queen of stakeholder engagement, and your staff is phenomenal. So if all of you don't know her staff, please reach out. Sorry, folks.
By the way, they're over there. Chris Land, raise your hand. Connor Brown, raise your hand. This is the deepest body of knowledge on Capitol Hill and digital assets. We encourage you to reach out and help us help you make our statutes clear and understood and fair, and keep innovation in the United States in this space. I can assure you that my staff is all ears when it comes to what you have to say.
Well, Senator, thank you so much for all you do for this industry, for all the folks in this room, for having great staff, and for representing Wyoming. You're phenomenal all around. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Kara.